If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettle. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Harris, CEO of BrainLit, a pioneering company in biocentric lighting. BrainLit specializes in optimizing the human environment through light. Not the kind of light that just helps you see, but helps you improve your health, well-being, and performance. In this episode, we dive into how light can be used to boost cognitive performance, regulate circadian rhythms, and even combat jet lag. Central to our conversation today is the dosing of light to produce a biological effect within the body. We discuss lux, the unit of measurement for the brightness of light, and a key distinguisher between natural sunlight and indoor lighting. The brighter the light, or the higher lux, the less exposure you need to it to have a biological impact on your circadian rhythm and therefore your performance. So, if you've ever felt groggy after spending all day under fluorescent lights or wondered how lighting affects your sleep and energy, stay tuned for the takeaways at the end of the show for specific recommendations on how to maximize your cognitive performance. Let's get started. Today, I'm so excited to welcome the CEO of one of my favorite companies, BrainLit, Kyle Harris. He's here to talk with us about the importance of light beyond just being able to see. It has such a profound impact on everything from your cognitive performance and alertness all the way through your mood, as I think many people will recognize through the different seasons during the year. Kyle, welcome.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We're really excited for the conversation today. And I'd like to jump right in with the importance of light. We always view sleep as being the anchor of the circadian rhythm. But then as you wake up, light starts to take such a big role in the ebbs and flows of energy and your performance during the day. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Sure. I think that people recognize light for sight, right?
Yeah.
So you're not bumping into furniture, when it's dark, you can't see things. That's almost half of the equation.
Mm.
What we're talking about when you refer to circadian, it's the light that's driving a photoreceptor response, which is creating a endocrine response for melatonin suppression, which allows for circadian entrainment and melanopic entrainment. And when you do that correctly, the light is an energizing, focusing tool. And then when you remove the light, in essence, much as you can imagine, you relax, you fall asleep. And when you do the appropriate light curves correctly, your body is, the human is diurnal. It responds to light and dark.
Right.
And a lot of the environments that we live in these days are too bright or too dark at the wrong time of the day. And if you move from your house to your car to an office, you're inside glass, which can be taking away the appropriate healthy components of light, which allows those non-visual receptors to receive the light that it needs to drive your physical response. And I think just light is very misunderstood. I think it's back from Thomas Edison for light for sight. Everyone thinks they know it, but then you look at the science of circadian and how light drives it it's probably rooted in Nobel Prizes in 2014 and 2017. So it's only 10 years old where you really start to understand how lighting can make your environment healthier, and then how products like our product, Biocentric, or a platform like ours, comes into the market and then begins to
Hmm.
redesign spaces. So you're, elevating the health and wellness of people in that space.
Right. And you mentioned a few things right at the start there, the photoreceptors, the endocrine response. So I'm assuming we're talking about the photoreceptors in the eyes, and then they send the stimulus to the brain to sort of change that chemical milieu that's going on in the body. Can you talk us through what's going on there a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the non-visual effects of light are mediated by the stimulation of a class of photoreceptors, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGC, and to go very
Right.
technical. When the right light goes into that, the retinal hypothalamic tract projects into the retina, which then hits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your body's cellular clock.
Right.
And then if that's happening correctly, then the suprachiasmatic nucleus is then stimulating the pineal gland, which is where you then build the melatonin. When
Right.
you have the right spectrum suppressing the melatonin creation, then you're focused and energized. When you take off that spectrum of light, you then build melatonin, which allows you to then go to sleep and stay asleep.
Hmm.
And what you're
Hmm.
looking for is energized light environments, which suppress the melatonin during the day
Yeah.
or whenever you need to be energized. And then to help you take out the suppressing spectrum during the night or whenever you need it to be considered darker, or
Yeah.
the appropriate darkness or appropriate spectrum. It doesn't have to be dark, it just has to be the right spectrum. So
Hmm.
you want to take out the stimulating spectrum so that then you can then begin to build melatonin so that when you are ready to go to sleep, you have an appropriate, the gland is stimulated and ready to
Yeah.
put you to sleep.
Yeah, so when we get that melatonin suppression, we got cortisol coming up the other way to activate and stimulate. And I
Yep.
think cortisol is often seen as a stress hormone. And I think that label means bad in a lot of people's minds, but it's actually a critical and very natural component of that early morning rise, right? As we get that light into our eyes. And you mentioned the windows and things like that blocking some of this light. Talk to me a bit about the impact of natural light, and you've mentioned different wavelengths here. As we get natural light, how does that impact us?
So, so if you just experientially look at how the sun rises and sets, it changes in intensity, it changes in color, and then it goes to dark. That's the natural diurnal curve. Inside that color change, there's a spectral change. So it goes from blue cyan to more warmer
Yeah,
browns, buttery colors.
yeah,
But when you're in the right spectral range, 490 nanometer and the half width, which is 450 to 530, that's where you're creating that photoreceptor response that you want for that energy and focus. When you take that out, then you're changing the environment to be allowing for the melanopic entrainment.
right.
And when you think of how we talk about, a hat, sunglasses, car, office, I have a very nice window looking at the East River in New York City. The
Hmm.
problem is at some point in the day, the sun is outside the range of where I can see it.
Right.
I'm basically in a shadow,
Hmm.
and the window that I have has some sort of tint on it, so that
Yeah.
even when I do have a great visual, open, sunny day experience like I have today in New York, it's not necessarily driving the response that I need for the biological health.
Right.
So, and if you think about buildings, they don't actually follow the light. They don't follow the sun as it moves east west, and it doesn't go over the horizon. So maybe if you have a perfect office with non-tinted windows, or basically non-commercial glass, you may get some benefit, but you're really
Hmm.
not. In most cases, it's being designed for different outcomes for energy efficiency, temperatures, controls, things like that, but not
Right.
necessarily how to let the right spectrum through to allow it to hit your photoreceptor. You get the
Right.
visual aspects of it, and that's really the what needs to be understood is you want to achieve beautiful, well lit spaces. However,
Hmm.
you can get them visually lit, but then you also want to design for the healthiest measured uh, definition of a space to get that, and that's where you
Yeah.
start talking about the different standards of light for health versus light for sight. When you start talking about melanopic equivalency, daylight illumines, MEDI, and how do you design the space, and then how do you let that space modulate from morning to afternoon to evening. Um, and that's really the kind of the key to what biocentric light does, is that we're taking all the elements of a design visually, delivering high quality visual light, and then layering a very sophisticated set of measurements into the design to allow for the MEDI calculations. And then, because we are focusing on how we deliver that light throughout the course of the day, there's modulation on the intensity and spectrum that's being delivered.
Right.
And in that modulation, then that allows us some really interesting capabilities for focus, jet lag mitigation, some other things that static light environments don't do. So it's taking what you got in the windows, which are great,
Yeah.
makes you feel good, but on a sunny day, the window's not as powerful as on a cloudy day. The window's not as powerful psychologically. And on either day, they probably have about the same net effect on your biological health.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to go back to the natural light component for a second here, because you touched on something really important that, as we're considering more practical steps later on, you mentioned being in shadow, you mentioned wearing a hat, potentially sunglasses. I would consider the sunglasses, but not necessarily the being in shadow. I would consider going out and sitting on the porch. We're here in Florida, it's 200 degrees outside. We'll go and sit on the porch and we'll see the blue sky, we'll see the bright natural light. But are you saying that we actually need to be able to be in sunlight and have it coming directly into the eyes in order to get that benefit?
I mean, no, don't stare at the sun. Let's establish that, right? But if you look at what a blue sky looks like, right, it's diffused. It carries a lot of volume of light, but you don't need to be staring at it. But every time you reduce the direct spectrum into the eye, into the receptor, you're minimizing the value of that 20 minutes of hot sunlight.
Yeah.
When you shade it, then you're reducing the value of that 20 minutes. So to the extent that you can leave yourself as long as comfortable, and that's why different times of the day are more valuable, right? The morning towards this rising sun, it's both angle, intensity, and time of day is a very perfect time, but very few people have that 20-minute walk at the sun at 8 o'clock in the morning or 6 to 8, right? There's just, our life doesn't engender that walking in the meadows concept, and we're not working outside nearly as much as we were in more agrarian times. So we lose the benefit of even being near the sun. If you look at, if you think about the amount of sunlight that the volume of sun, it's 100,000 lux. An office has 350 lux. So, you don't want to be staring at the sun, but just being out in it. And then also the time of day, because it changes the spectrum that's being delivered, helps you to set the clock. So different times of day are nice. If you only have a short window to consume it, you try to get the morning because that can set the whole day. But if you're able to experience longer days, then you'll get that load and unload concept, which is more naturally how we develop that more of a diurnal, physiology.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so you mentioned one word there, and I've heard this a lot on some of the popular podcasts. We're talking about lux. What exactly is that? Is it a unit of measure?
So it is a unit of measure. And then there's lux can be defined for different things. Lux for facility design is lux on the surface. When we talk about MEDI lux, melanopic equivalency daylight illuminance, it's the lux going into the receptor.
Okay.
So it's a different angle. It's got a different purpose than basically giving you a lit working surface. And then the temperature is how blue and bright versus warmer and brown. Do you want it based on the use case? But you will find that when you go into certain environments, based on the light source itself, it will be too warm for earlier in the day. So you don't want your office to resemble a lounge if you're trying to energize your workforce or keep them healthy, because you want that elevated energy and focus. And that elevated energy and focus, when you change the spectrum, when they go home and the sun sets, then they get the melanopic entrainment off of the natural loading of that curve. So if you're suppressing someone's working environment by making it too warm, not warm temperature-wise, but warm color-wise all day long, you're actually suppressing that you're allowing melatonin to be built throughout the day, and you don't really need that. You want that kind of suppression to be happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's
And
where it becomes the key is understanding when and why you want certain things happening. And in particular use cases for us, you can load the blue light energy
right.
for very tactical purposes, jet lag
Hmm.
mitigation, pre-game energize, post-game decompression, changing the environments. Outside of a more smooth recurring, you can do very tactical spikes.
Hmm.
You can also do afternoon, energy boosts with light by changing how a conference room is set when people are doing that 3 o'clock, post lunch lull. Light can actually help energize through that. You want
Right.
you need intensity, color, and volume
Mm.
and the right spectrum throughout the day, which is the kind of the moving, the modulation of the environment, which is where you're in the right space.
Oh, I got you.
When your body responds very quickly to it. So there are studies that say when you're in the right kind of light, you can actually see the cortisol levels change at the blood testing level within 20 minutes. I mean, you're
Wow.
so responsive to it.
Hmm.
The problem is most of our environments don't even allow for that because they're not built correctly to deliver that. So we were highly
Yeah.
responsive to it. And what you want is a lot of that recurring nature of it so that uh, when you experience social jet lag, a late night, you
Yes.
know, not going to sleep at the same time, not waking up at the same time, a trip, you can actually smooth out some of the impact of that social jet lag or even actual jet lag by
Yeah.
having your body kind of running smoother, deeper curves. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is create the best holistic environment um, across the enterprise, not
Yeah.
just a single person kind of concept.
So I want to touch on those terms that you use. There's jet lag and there's social jet lag. We talked about this with Sherry Ma on our sleep podcast that we did a couple months back. It's super fascinating that we can actually, by shifting our bedtime and our wake time over the weekend in as little as 2, 3 days, we can actually shift our circadian clocks, our whole body rhythm. And then come Monday, we try and wake up when our 6 o'clock alarm comes off and we're groggy. We actually can't shake that shift in body
Yep.
clock. It takes us till about Wednesday to get back on track. So it highlights the importance 7 days a week of keeping your bed and wake time within an hour so that we can stay consistent. And Kyle, that point about the lighting, my career in pro sport, man, we were in practice facilities in these really high end locker rooms in arenas, but they're all underground, right? Or they don't have any natural light coming into the building at all. And so we would land 2 in the morning. We'd be back in the rink at 9 in the morning under
Yep.
fluorescent lights, and everybody was just hurting, and there
Oh
was there
yeah.
was no variation, and it was just this crappy quality light all day. You just such long hours under these bulbs. Um, Talk a little bit about the biocentric lighting. Then you've explained how you can mesh the light for vision with the light for health. How have you guys come about that? Where did this concept come from, and how did you manage to build it into these devices?
I mean, it kind of goes back to our original inception. Our founder, a guy named Tord Lindgren, was one of the original developers of Bluetooth. Was on the specification team with Ericsson back in the day. Started getting involved with lighting, trying to solve different issues, and started to understand the kind of the health and wellness concepts of lighting. And then when you started to look at the Nobel prizes for circadian and then blue light in 2014 and 2017, that's where the momentum behind BrainLit started to kind of kick in. And he did some extensive research to kind of understand what could you do with LED. LED has greater capacity to modulate and be tunable than fluorescent and incandescent, which allowed some of the things that we lever. But then you have to understand the chronobiology of the individual, the bio clock, and then be able to create a system that allows for the light source and the controls and the recipe to come together to do it. So in Europe, I think there's a greater sophistication when we're a Sweden founded company. So the the darkness issue there. I think there's a
Right.
greater sensitivity to the value and benefit of lighting. Um, in the U.S., it may not be as educated in the power of light for health, but we focused initially on how to focus on those organizations which were high performing organizations that
Right.
were looking for that incremental change. And I think we actually got it wrong. I think when we started talking to the teams, we were so fixated on the players, the
Hmm.
high dollar assets, that
Yeah.
we were almost myopic and too narrowly focused, that we were forgetting that there's, for every one player, there's 5, 6, 10 staff and support
Correct.
people, and the player may be there from 10 to 1, but the
Exactly right.
coaches and staff are there from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And
Right.
that's the whole season. And depending on the sport, that doesn't change. And then
Exactly.
you throw in fixture, congestion or travel, and the different sports calendars and how much they travel versus, the directions they travel. That we just kind of started levering up on sport in the US, but it's much bigger. It's a holistic opportunity, not a player centric opportunity.
Hmm.
It's not a set of compression boots or a
Yeah. Yeah.
supplement designed for an individual player. It's the building as an enterprise value statement to everybody that walks into the space is getting the best light at the right time of day, which elevates their natural, uh, basically their individual self
Yeah.
while supporting the team. And then the players layer all of their performance kit on top of what they've done at the building level.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of an interesting change for us. And then when you start talking about arena and stadium design, which is branded design for cool and sexy and brand versus educating design for healthy and performance, there's an education that needed to be provided, because you get some of these locker rooms and they're beautiful and cool looking, but in
Hmm.
all the wrong colors at all the
Yeah.
wrong times. And what's the goal, right? Is it for the Instagram photo, or is it to support the health and wellness and performance of the players and staff? We can do both, but you
Yeah.
have to design them with an understanding that you don't need that green, reds, and blues in the locker room pregame. You want more high energy blue light for focus and energy
Yeah.
loading. And
Yeah.
that's where it kind of works through the system is, what are you doing it? What are you doing it for? And then when you take it out to corporate commercial, your employees are your team members, right?
Yeah.
They're just as valuable as your football player, your basketball player, but you may have more of them and they may not get making $20 million a year, but that's still the underpinning of where your organization resides. Can you make them
Yeah.
healthier on a passive basis? Can you give them something that they don't actually have to do, but come to work and work in an environment? And that's what we focus on, is how do you elevate the whole organization by
Yeah.
something. I guarantee you every company has light in their building.
That
It's
is
whether
right.
they're leveraging that light to make it a tool to add value to the people under it versus light just for, seeing.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you on that. I think, well, there's a couple of points. Number one, it is not acknowledged, it is not recognized as a performance enhancer. And
Oh, no,
I want
not yet.
to
Well, let me
correct.
rephrase that. The people that we talk to, once you walk them through it and show them the sensitivity to their own experience on a biosensor, and you put them
Hmm.
under, like that big lamp that I have back there is
Yeah.
our Alvin product. When you put coaches and players under an Alvin lamp for very short durations, and they start to see their Whoop, Garmin, Aura, Apple Watch, their biosensor move, then they're like, oh, wow, it's exactly like you told us.
Correct. Yeah.
And we kind of talk about it as being in that plant in the corner of the office. And when you put it on the windowsill, it thrives. You
Yeah.
need the right light. And when you do it, then that's what changes. So yeah, absolutely. I
Hmm.
think there's just a curve. There's a skepticism. I think some earlier attempts in the category were not designed appropriately, not designed with
Hmm.
enough discipline, not designed with true metrics into what. So I think there was some muddied waters.
Yeah.
But I think when they understand the rigor at which we come about the design and what we're delivering, if it doesn't meet our standard, we won't call it biocentric. It's just light
Right.
for sight. If
Right.
it's not light for sight that gives you the aesthetic you want, and then measured, I won't call it medical outcome, but physiological or measured outcome for the MEDI, then it's not biocentric. It's just it's a well-designed lit space. And
Right.
that's the difference in what we do, is that we're putting both things together to give you the aesthetic and the performance. And performance can be extended to schools. Performance in a hospital is different. You have performance and well-being of the nursing staff and the doctors and the regular staff. But then performance in a patient room is how quickly can you allow them to recover? Can you give them better sleep, even though they're being interrupted multiple times a night? How do you make them more focused and alert, but also sleeping better while they're stuck in a bed? Definitely not getting out for that walk, or in most cases, not that many windows in hospitals, or you may not be near the window at all. So you don't even get the psychological benefit of a window in some hospital rooms because you're too far away from it to even see it.
Yeah.
So those are things that we do when you look at the different categories and sectors that we support. And across those categories, there's different, key performance indicators as to what works. And so we have to be able to educate that particular user group why in a classroom, cognition and focus and memory retention is what's being delivered when you put a kid under biocentric light in a classroom. Higher retention means you're more focused, means you're retaining more. Therefore, your education is going to be better. When you're looking at athletic performance, can you drive a team of 53 football players to a single point of peak energy at kickoff? You can do that with the right lighting, if tuned correctly and pushed correctly. And then what do you do to try to help them to decompress? You change the lighting post game. Those aren't the smooth, long curves. It's the tactical spikes. And you can do those things across almost any lit environment if you understand how to deliver it and why you're delivering it that way.
And I love that you're touching on this, Kyle. Like first of all, thank you for acknowledging the support staff and coaches of a team. They rarely get acknowledged for technology and health outside of the players. But the other thing is, my mind immediately goes to non-athletic performers, because we built Vitality Collective to bring the lessons of pro sport to the high performer outside of sport, because performance is performance. And we actually call the CEOs, we call the traders and these guys who work in finance, we call them cognitive athletes, because their performance is this top 3 inches. And recognizing that is a malleable trait is so critical. And I love that concept of tactically using the light to peak, because we talk to people who have super, super intense 2-hour blocks at 2 p.m, right as your natural circadian dip would be. And then we talk about the hockey players I worked with, the basketball players, they've got to be out playing games at 7:30 at night.
But take that one even further. They're in the facility at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. They've taken all natural light trigger or support out as soon as you enter a traditionally poorly lit space.
Yeah.
Once you enter that cave of the arena, your body says, "Oh, the sunset." What does it start to do? It starts to, you release the suppressing factor. So therefore, you're now trying to energize and focus the body to go execute on its task, while your endocrine system says, "Oh, it's time for bed." How do you make those environments the healthiest they can be with the delivery of the right kind of light for the people understanding how they live and work? Just because with light for visual, all you need is light everywhere.
Yeah.
When you change it to light for use and light for outcomes, then that's what we focus on. That's really the power of Biocentric, is our ability to create that recipe, understanding the value of the curves and the loading, but then also to attribute it to the use case of the individual. When we started, you assume that when you're selling into sports, right, you got to go get a player to convince the player that it's useful. Well, players are tough. They're also skeptical because they get hit with a lot of stuff. So then when we started talking about how to get coaches to use it, and staff, that's where we started to really pick up our traction. Was let us borrow the lamps to try it on 8 or 10 staff members. And then within a week, they're like, "Wow, I see my aura ring move. That's pretty powerful." Yeah, we told you it would be.
As you alluded to, like, it's the staff who are there for the extended period of time. That's something the players don't.
They're coming in the dark and they're leaving when it's dark.
Leaving in the dark, right?
And when they look at the environments that these guys, between travel, arrival times, departure times, what time do you have to be there pregame, postgame? It's in season. I mean, I think you can speak to it. Literally, it's 6 to 9. It feels like during the season.
Oh,
And
it
that's
absolutely
crazy if
is,
you're indoor and not
and
a
that's
window in
the
sight.
you're in a basement.
Yep.
Like you're literally underground in a bunker. And that's the thing. I lived it for 20 years. And being in Canada, especially, where you're in the winter, it's February in Canada, you get up, it's dark. Even if you leave after morning skate and you get to go outside for lunch, it's still pretty much dark, right?
It's gray. Yeah. It's
Gray, it's overcast, the sun's not very high, but then the sun's coming down again by 4:30.
Yep.
And so and the winter up there is so long. We were dramatically impacted, Michelle and I both, Michelle more than me, with seasonal affective disorder just from that absence of light. What might people experience as a symptom of either being in these poorly lit environments or being in those far northern light exposures?
Well, I think the most common recognized, the thing that's people tend to say they've heard of is seasonal affect disorder.
Hmm.
And that's usually a function of a serotonin issue based on the environment. You know, our system is very focused on circadian rhythms, light through the photoreceptors to drive the energy and focus and sleep. When you are in a biocentric environment and you're sleeping better and you're more energized in the environment you're working in, we anecdotally have been told people are happier. When they sleep
Hmm.
better, they wake up energized. When they're
Yeah,
working and are energized, they make fewer mistakes. When you elevate the quality of the environment, then you get a more, holistic happiness. We have people that say, I sleep better, so I snore less, so my wife is happier. I
yeah,
feel more energized during the day. I don't have the need for that afternoon cup of coffee that I used to demand. I don't have the afternoon post lunch dip that I used to have where I would go seek in a candy bar. I mean, and those are anecdotal, but when you start to hear the same anecdote from football to hockey to baseball to
right,
corporate to retail, then you start to believe that they're,
yeah,
consistent. And that's what a properly lit environment can do for you. And then you touched on, non-sport, the intellectual athlete, traders trading overnight. They're trading
right.
foreign currencies, they're there in the dark. So how do you give
Hmm.
them the best opportunity for the healthiest environment with the healthiest living the life of a vampire? How do you give
Yeah,
them the best light? And
yeah.
that's what our system can do as well.
Well, we certainly noticed that firsthand. We have one of the units, and we've used it extensively in all these different environments. We've been in Canada, where there's very, very little light in the winter for extended periods. We've been in California, where you think, oh, it's sunny all the time. Well, if you're in Santa Barbara, it's cloudy essentially from May all the way through June. All right. And so we're sitting under those clouds, and it's very dark. It's very gray.
I think if you begin to break apart your day, right, no matter where you live, you go jokingly say house to car or house to subway to office to subway or to car and then to home. There's very few minutes that you're actually outdoors, regardless of
Yeah.
where you are. And even
Yeah.
if you live in Miami or Santa Barbara, wherever you perceive it to be sunny, you still just don't get that much time in natural
In
sunlight.
the sun.
It's
Yeah.
got some glass, it's got some filter, it's got some artificial light involved in it.
Carl, it's a real important message as well, because one of the things that we did was bring it. We had these little square portable like satellites that
Yep.
we got one for each of the staff, for that purpose, that it would sit on their desk at the computer. We're on 4 hours of sleep, and we got those. And you alluded to that muddy water. I don't know. I would sit it there, but it never really had much of an impact on me. And we got one for Michelle when she was really struggling with seasonal affective disorder, and it was okay. But I think that distinction you made between the UV elements and these other elements of sunlight giving you what you need from a serotonin standpoint versus the artificial light, which is going
Yep.
to give you the energy more on the sort of hormonal cortisol level. Can you speak a little bit to what differentiates the biocentric lighting, just in terms of the power of that Alvin lamp that you've got sat next to you versus the little sad light that you might have sitting on your desk to help you out?
Well, I think we'll go back to the 100,000 lux versus a office at 350 lux.
Mm,
When you look at that little cube, sad cube, that sad cube is just not putting out enough volume of light. It may or may not be in the right spectrum. it may have some underlying flicker based on the quality of the LED that's driving that you don't even see that's causing you stress. So there's things that go into the design of a product that you want to take into account. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the volume in the right spectrum at the right angle, I mean, the best is kind of down and back because you're hitting the bottom back of the
Yeah.
eye. If it's sitting on your desk, it's kind of going up. You need it to be going down. That's why the Alvin lamp, which I have here and the one back there, I mean, it stands about 6 feet tall. And when I use a standing desk, so I've got mine a little bit elevated above 6, but when you're sitting down, you're at the right angle for that light to go into the receptor correctly. And then that system changes and modulates throughout the day, delivering the right spectrum. The Alvin at 6 o'clock at night is a much warmer color than it is right now at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it will continue to change color and dim because you want to pull out that blue light energy as you move to the afternoon and evening. So yeah, and the other thing is, if that box isn't changing, that little cube isn't modulating throughout the day, then at some point it's the wrong color and intensity.
Yeah.
So if it's not enough, then at some point it's probably poorly timed and poorly colored and poorly spectrum. You don't want that either. Oh, I bought some light bulbs. Okay, well, how do you change the light bulb? Or, oh, I wear blue light glasses. Okay, well, if you wear blue lights, glasses all day long, you want some of that blue light. So you don't want to be cutting it all out. So if you're not careful, you can swing to the other end of the spectrum doing too much. You can have a reaction to trying to solve one problem, which creates another. Yeah. Blue light glasses are an interesting opportunity if you use them correctly. But if you only have one pair of glasses, you may be blocking too much blue light when you need it to get to the benefits of blue blocking in the evening when you may be using a laptop TV or have a too brightly lit home. Understand those things, right? That's you have to be careful. If you don't understand the spectral power distribution and the spectral distribution that you're trying to achieve, it's tough. And I think that's where people miss out.
Yeah, well, and that I think we see in all aspects, certainly of the health and wellness industry, and I'm sure it extends beyond, but we see these overreactions, right? We see it in all different areas, but under certain circumstances, this is bad. And all the general public hears is this is bad. And so, we get a lot of blue light from our phones. And so, okay, we're going to take all the blue light out of our phone and take all the blue light out of this. And it just becomes this overreaction of what is at the appropriate time a very positive thing. We mentioned cortisol earlier. Everybody's trying to get rid of cortisol, right? But how are you going to wake up, right?
It has an energizing effect that you want.
Yeah. And we need it to taper off. I think it's understanding the nuance of light and how we apply it. So let's talk then about what people can do, right? Some of the people listening who will be in a position to impact the enterprise, right? To say, oh my God, we need this for our company and we're going to install this in our building. Other people will be the people who show up to work and don't necessarily have the buying power, the influence to be able to impact that. What can I do if I don't have access to this? Because we see outside of sport, we have all those same problems. The business traveler has the jet lag, right? But they don't necessarily have the support, guys like myself and others showing up in Singapore to help them adjust. What can people do about this?
So I think you have to, there's the simple things. And I think it's, get as much morning light as you can. Mm-hmm. Some of these things do you have the discipline to do it? Some things are going to seem obvious, but impossible. So as much morning light as you can get as early as you wake up, go take a walk, maybe impossible, but that's a low burden. Mm-hmm. Understanding the impact of caffeine in the afternoon that will then disrupt your sleeping patterns is another one. Yeah. Assess that for yourself. Some people are very low sensitivities to caffeine and sleep. Others don't. I can drink it all day long. I know other people that they smell it at noon and they're not sleeping all night. I mean, who knows? That's just a personal thing. And then the other one, which I think is really becoming the standard, is understanding that, if you can regulate sleep times and wake up times and make that consistent, those are the three almost easiest things you can possibly do. Everyone talks to us about melatonin, tablets or supplements. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I can't say, I think they're hard to regulate. I think there's different, how much do you take? When do you take it? How does it affect your next day if you took too much? I find you're kind of guessing too much with melatonin, but
Yeah,
therefore
well,
I'm not a
and with the
doctor.
research on melatonin, we found that if you're in a stable time zone and you supplement with melatonin, it added about 8 minutes of sleep a night. It wasn't in any way effective or significant. The only time we would use it is if we were traveling west to east,
Yep.
and we would supplement with about 3 to 5 milligrams in that circumstance to help our guys adjust because you're trying to fall asleep earlier. And so we wanted to just turn up that melatonin dial a little bit for them and help them with that transition. But again, I think it's the nuance that people aren't paying attention to with stuff like that. They just think, oh,
Yeah.
melatonin for
No.
sleep. I'll just crush a load of this.
Well, yeah, and you're talking about it in what do you say, 3 to 5 milligrams?
Yeah,
You're doing it as a nudge. People that are
exactly.
taking 25 and God forbid 50 milligrams every single night.
Oh my god.
It's like, well, how'd you go from 3 to 5 to 10 to 15? Well, it's what I found on the shelf.
Right.
Okay, but how long does your body have to take to burn that off into your next day? It's not
Exactly.
like it puts it back in on the shelf and your gland and says, oh, we'll use this tonight. It's there. You got to burn through it.
Right. Well,
And
and
what I would call the hangover effect of bad
yeah,
supplementation, especially melatonin, is worse than not using it at all. Um,
agreed. Yeah, it's a hormone at the end of the day. And so I think that's not acknowledged. It's a hormone that not only helps with sleep, but it has many, many jobs to do in the body and influences many systems. And so we don't want to be messing with that. The delicate balance between melatonin and cortisol is a really important one. If you've still got elevated levels of melatonin, your cortisol's suppressed. So now you're not waking up. So now you really do have that jet lag in the morning from it, the grogginess. And some of the things that we've found, Kyle, that complement the light, anything that's good for your mental health and that promotes cortisol, promotes these hormonal shifts, it is really, really good for seasonal affective disorder, for energy, for mood, all these other things. So we look at light being the number one anchor in the morning, but then exercise. All
mhm.
kinds of exercise boost cortisol in the morning. So if you get some exercise, if you can be around community, talk about serotonin and all the neurotransmitters involved with happiness and connection, hugely influential in your ability to improve your mental health. We talk about your vitamin D levels. You mentioned those. People in the northern latitudes really struggle with vitamin D. So making sure you're on top of these things, making sure your diet's really good.
Well, so just to focus on vitamin D, that little bit of that morning walk, if you can figure out again, it's going to solve your vitamin D problem. It's a lack of access to the natural light, which is the
Correct.
problem. Not that the sun doesn't have it when you're out in it. It's just
Exactly.
long sleeve shirts, collars up to here. You have your cheekbone. No, walk shirtless down the street. I think you're going to have a problem. But that's
You would in Canada.
yeah. But those are the things that when you start to make these small changes, right? That if you can get access to that morning light, that will begin to solve that vitamin D problem. You don't need
Yeah.
hours and hours of sunlight. I think I've heard that 20 minutes is enough to help with enough vitamin D stimulation.
Hmm.
Well, you're going to get that same 20 minutes if you can get it naturally, then you're going to get the sunlight for vitamin D and sunlight for circadian alignment if you can get it, but it's hard to get. And people have talked to us, so why don't you introduce vitamin D into your environments? Well, vitamin D is a UV function. You don't want
Right.
UV in an office environment.
That is correct.
So we specifically have eliminated some of the things that we know we can affect with light.
Yeah. And we've talked about the enterprise level, so the business solutions that you do. Can individuals use this as a solution? We work from home. A lot of people working from home now. Is this something that people can have at a personal level?
Yes. I mean, the Alvin lamp, which is used across a lot of the professional teams, is kind of a plug and play turnkey. I will admit it's kind of on the pricier end, but it actually
Hmm.
does. It's a specialty product. You will see from BrainLit coming soon what we would call circadian affective spaces, right? Your work desk, singular use cases. I don't know that we're going
Hmm.
to run to residential, because,
Yeah.
we're doing commercial. But there will be some stuff coming down the path. So just, keep an eye on brainlit.com or shop.brainlit.com. You can see the Alvin. We'll get you a customer code, discount code for your clientele that they can start benefiting from it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the fastest way. If you're not in a purchasing mode, then try to take that walk. And, that's as free as you're going to get if you can get to it.
Yeah.
And I can't beat free.
Yeah. Kyle, I think, the importance of what you've emphasized here from a takeaway standpoint of these foundational fundamental elements of improving your exposure to natural light, all the stuff we talked through in terms of the lifestyle adaptations to improve, and then the performance enhancing benefits of something like biocentric lighting. We've never had anyone on the show who's come in and offered this is going to fix all your problems. Take this supplement, do this one thing. And it always comes back to these foundational elements. And I really love that messaging and the importance of what you're doing, the importance of light. We've experienced it. And the boost of cognitive performance. That's what I really want people to take away, is that your cognitive performance is a changeable thing. And we can start thinking about that and investing in the performance of our staff and the health and well-being of our staff through systems like this. It's so powerful and so underrated. And the upside, I think, can just be so dramatic.
Well, I mean, you've been chasing professional performance in sports, right? And when you understand how many layers there is to stacking the ultimate performance, we believe that lighting is one of the foundational layers that is being underutilized. And the fact that you can, as we talked about, right? Players get the best of the best, and then it kind of bleeds throughout the organizations. We go to these amazing gyms and these, great facilities, and they're like, oh yeah, the staff can use the gym. Okay, that's great. When do they have time? When do they fit it in? It's great that it's there, but how do you benefit from it? When you apply biocentric light to an environment, staff gets it by being in the building. And then everything that gets done on let's call it the highest end of the performance, is done on an elevated foundation, which is better energy and focus for game performance, and then better sleep and recovery. And that's the key, right? When you get that melanopic entrainment and you're building the appropriate amount of melatonin your body can produce and needs, then you get better sleep latency. You go to sleep faster. You stay asleep. You get more complete sleep cycles for however many hours you allow yourself to sleep. Most people may need an alarm clock. Maybe people get up naturally, but whatever amount of time you allow yourself to sleep, you should try to achieve the most complete 90-minute cycles. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. And then you wake up as energized as you're going to be, and then you go back into an environment that elevates you again. Ultimately, that's the goal, is how many people can we help by just putting something that's already above their head and making it into a multi-enhancing tool, visual and now healthy versus just visual. And so it's exciting for us. We love across the organization, Sacramento Kings, Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Union, half the English Premier League is using us now. We've got hospitals and schools across the U.S. that are using our stuff. And as people become educated that they can help everyone in the building by just buying something they're guaranteed to buy, then it kind of becomes a little bit of a no-brainer.
It really is. It really is. Well, Kyle, thanks so much. You mentioned the website there. You guys are on social, or I'd love for people to be able to find you guys and learn a little bit more about biocentric lighting.
BrainLit.com is probably the best one, and it's shop.brainlit.com.
We'll post all of those links in the show notes.
Great.
Kyle, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been awesome.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the time.
That was an amazing conversation with Kyle Harris on the power of biocentric light. Here are the 3 key takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, get morning light daily. The brightness of natural sunlight on a clear day is around 100,000 lux, meaning that just 15 minutes of outdoor light shortly after waking is enough to align your circadian rhythms and boost your energy. Even on a cloudy day, just 20 to 30 minutes is sufficient. Number 2, limit your afternoon caffeine. Notice how your body responds to caffeine later in the day and be mindful of its impact on your sleep. Cutting off caffeine after 2 p.m. ensures that it's out of your system well before it's time to wind down for sleep. Number 3, be consistent with sleep and wake times. Keeping your bedtime and wake time within 1 hour every single day, even on weekends, helps you avoid social jet lag. Now, I was only introduced to BrainLit after I'd left sport, and I have to say I'm seriously disappointed that I didn't have access to this technology with the professional teams that I designed practice facilities for during my career. In the future, any team or high-performing organization that I'm consulting with will be encouraged to make this investment for the well-being and performance of their personnel. It really is a simple decision for me. If you're enjoying these episodes, it would mean a lot to us if you'd subscribe to the show and follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram at Vitality Collective Performance on all platforms. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.